Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Sandy Laycox, Editor-in-Chief of Leader's Edge. In this episode of our Personal Lines podcast, Associate Editor Chris Hand talks with Pamela Wheeler, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for NFP. Pamela talks about her early career in the sports industry, including with the WNBA, and how she got her first job as a legal intern with the Giants using her retirement plan skills. She discusses her move from sports to insurance and how understanding DE&I as a business imperative and changing the systems and processes within the industry are crucial for success. I hope you enjoy this great conversation.
We are here for today's Personal Lines interview with Pamela Wheeler. She is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at NFP, and you are in New York. Is that correct, Pamela?
Yes.
First of all, I'm reasonably confident that you're the first person I've interviewed for this Personal Lines Q&A who led the Women's National Basketball Players Association.
Yes.
So tell me about that job and how it came to be.
So I was, the founding director for the WNBPA, and the players unionized, the WNBA players unionized in 1998. And they selected the NBA Players Association as their collective bargaining agent. And the NBPA then hired me to come on and run the WNBPA. And so I did that for 15 years.
Wow. And you had some background in that discipline.
In sport. Yes.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about that.
So right after while I was in law school after my first year, I interned with the San Francisco Giants. And my second year of law school, I interned with the Oakland A's. So I knew I wanted to go into sports field. And after law school, I went to work for Bob Wolf Associates, which was what we would probably think of now as Bob Wolf being like the first mega agent.
Right.
So I worked for Bob Wolf Associates, which was then subsequently purchased by Arnold Communications. So I moved from the athlete representation side to the sports and entertainment, devising strategies for Fortune 500 companies. Then I went to the Continental Basketball Association, which predates the NBDL or the G League as the official developmental league of the NBA.
Wow, that's a long history. That's a that's a lot. Were you a basketball player?
I played basketball, but I certainly was not good enough to ever go to the WNBA or anything like that. Plus, I was too short. So, and of course, at that time when I was playing in high school, there was no future in it here in the United States. The WNBA, like 20 years away from happening.
Right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Rochelle, New York.
Tell me about growing up in New Rochelle, New York.
Yeah, I guess it's just like every other kid, you kind of don't know anything other than what you know. Grew up with friends, and we knew we were in New York, but we also knew that we were like not quite in the city. So I remember my first subway ride when I was 17 years old, and that's when I felt like a real New Yorker, because he doesn't go to Westchester. So that's when I think I became a real New Yorker, when I rode the subway for the first time.
Do you remember, did you have thoughts, aspirations of what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were a young girl?
Yeah, so my father tells this story. I think it's more a cocktail party story, because I don't remember it. He tells me, and he tells me all the time, that I told him when I was 6 I was going to be a sports lawyer.
No way. That's so funny. Yeah. Wow. How prophetic. Okay. But after law school, what were you thinking career-wise?
Well, like I said, I knew I knew when I was in undergrad that I wanted to go into the sports field.
Okay.
But certainly not like we have now, where there's sports programs at different schools, right? Even I remember in law school, when I was in law school, there were really 3 career paths. You either went to the DA's office, you did community service work, or you went to a corporate law firm. And I remember going into the career services office and telling them that I wanted to go into sports. And they said to me, well, good luck. Let us know how it works out. Maybe we can help the next person, because at that point, there were no sports programs in
Yeah.
school or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I was kind of on my own and doing it. And at that point, there was this book, this really big book that was called How to Get a Job in Sports. And it just sort of listed all of the sports entities at the time, all the leagues,
Wow.
apparel companies, and contact people within those companies. And so I just remember writing to every single person in the book, because that was when we were actually writing letters to people. And I wrote to them, and I always said that wherever that company was, that I was going to be there in the next 2 weeks, and could they meet with me? And so that's how I actually got the job with the Giants, because I told them I was going to be in San Francisco in 2 weeks and stuff. They
And
told
so
me
you
to,
were.
and I made it my business to get to San Francisco.
That sounds like a rather daunting thing to to basically be told, good luck, you're on your own.
That pretty much was it. Pretty much was it. And that year I got 501 rejections. 501.
Wow.
But I got one job with the Giants, and that's all I needed.
What was that job?
So I ended up interning with the in the legal department
Okay.
at the Giants. And the Giants, at that point, they had just gotten new ownership, and their new human resources director, the only, I wouldn't say deficiency, but the only area that she didn't know much about was retirement plans. And rewind to between undergrad and law school, I went to Chase Manhattan Bank and did one of those executive management year-long rotational programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was actually assigned, once I completed the program, to the pension trust department. So I happened to just have some experience in pension plans, which was the one area that the human resources director didn't have experience. So they hired me as a legal intern for the summer.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to back up a little bit. Who were your childhood heroes?
My childhood heroes were a lot of sports stars. Dr. J, absolutely adored him. He meant everything that, sports meant at the time, and still does, class personified,
Yeah.
taking the game to another level. And then people like Anita DeFrance, who was one of the first women, who was woman of color on the International Olympic Committee. And so Anita DeFrance was someone I looked up to very early on. I looked up to people like Elaine Weddington Stewart. She was the first Black woman who was the first assistant general manager of the Boston Red Sox.
Wow.
So those women, I looked up to, because I was like, I wanted to be like them.
Right. Wow. You had a substantial career in the sports field, in the sports world. So why NFP? What was the appeal? It seems like a big leap.
It does. I know to some people it says, like, how in the world do you go from sports to insurance and financial services? But NFP is actually, we have a very substantial sports and entertainment practice. Okay. So NFP wasn't foreign to me, because NFP is the broker of record for the players associations and for a number of leagues. And so our sports practice is pretty large. And so I was very familiar with NFP. And when they were looking for someone to not only devise, but drive a diversity and inclusion strategy globally for the entire enterprise, it was something that I knew I wanted to do. And after we had myriad of conversations, I think we were all in agreement that I could help drive a diversity, equitable inclusion, and belonging strategy throughout the entire enterprise.
So let me ask you about that that mission and that process, because obviously that's been a big discussion. You're in an industry that is, as the cliche goes, pale, male, and stale. And everybody I talk to, when I ask them, what's one thing you'd like to change? Not everybody, almost everybody mentions diversifying the workforce. So tell me about that from your perspective, going into this new industry that is traditionally male and white. How do you, where do you begin? And tell me about that process.
Yeah, so part of it is not just looking at it from the perspective of diversifying the workforce, right? Because that in and of itself doesn't really have any lasting impact. So it really for us is about understanding DEIB as a business imperative, that our business is going to be better because of it. And that our change has to come from the systems and cultures within the industry, right? If we keep the same systems and cultures and we just go to HBCUs and recruit people, that's not going to help us, because all we're going to do is increase our numbers, but then we're not going to be able to develop those people once they get here. We're not going to be able to help them prosper. We're not going to be able to incorporate them within the business. So our perspective is really, it has to be broader than just diversifying the workplace, because that in and of itself doesn't mean anything. How are we going to become a better provider for our clients, our partners, all of our stakeholders? And how do we provide that value alignment with those stakeholders? Because they too have, people want to do business with like-minded people, right? And so they want to do business with people who they feel have the same values that they have, that are committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and not just as the young people would say, from a program, miss me with the programs, right? From a programming point, but really about how do we create those systems and cultures within the industry collectively, because we're very big on that. And that's one of the things that we work with, with CIAB, with NIA, with BIC, with Alpha, all of the organizations that we partner with, because we do believe that individually, we're not going to be able to move the needle, but collectively we will be able to. So it's really about changing and addressing the systems and cultures that make the business that have traditionally made the business what it is. And then how do we go about addressing that change?
So let me ask you about that process, changing culture. That sounds like turning a really big ship around. Right? How do you do that? Even just specifically at NFP, what are you doing there?
It really is about understanding it first. Like, you got to have a recognition that we're designed to help certain people be successful, right? And how do we change that dynamic? And so part of that is things like, how do you view success, right? So if you traditionally view success as bottom line revenue, that's it, well, then you're not going to take into account things like other cultures that do things better. So for example, women have higher retention rates, right? They may not have the same revenue stream in some of our wealth businesses. They have higher retention rates. So how about let's change our culture and put a quantitative value on retention, right? So that recognizes something beyond just our bottom line. And because at the end of the day, that will impact our bottom line. There's something to say about the comfort in being able to go to sleep at night, knowing that Pam's clients aren't walking out the door every year, that we don't have to go to RFP. Chris may be making a couple more dollars in revenue, but every year we got to go out RFP on his, and every year we got to do whatever we can to keep those clients. And so how do you view success differently? And those are cultural things. Those are systemic things that we're talking about. What's the culture of developing people, right? Or do we have a culture of not just performance management or performance reviews, but actually do we have a culture of developing our underrepresented people? Are they in the right jobs? Are they doing the right things? And so those are the types of things when you talk about cultural and systemic that we continue to look at to make sure that our business is adapting to all of the cultures. Do we have a culture that is welcoming for people who have neurodiverse issues? Are we examining those things? So those are the types of cultural and systemic issues I'm talking about.
You're a member of the CIAB DEI Advisory Committee, and Joel Wood, I was talking with Joel, and he mentioned a meeting that you were at recently where this conversation came up, I guess the whole mission, the whole purpose of any DEI program. And there was a one side that said it was all about, the bottom line and making the company more profitable, and others said it was all about making the workforce look more like the rest of America. And then you came into the conversation. So tell me if you recall that conversation. Tell me about that, and tell me where you were coming from.
Yes, I think, sometimes we maybe oversimplify this thing here, but sometimes I think we think things have to be either or. So I think the conversation was, do we approach DEI from the position of a business imperative, or do we approach it from it's the right thing to do? And I don't think that those are mutually exclusive. Right? It is indeed the right thing to do, but it's also a business imperative. But when we talk about it being a business imperative and talk about making the business case for DEIB, we're not leaving those other things behind, right? We're not saying that we're strictly looking at the bottom line, and we don't want to be a good corporate citizen. We want to do both. And so I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. And so I think sometimes the conversation may be going in one direction or another, as if they can't operate on the same plane, as if it can't be the right thing to do, but it's also going to make us money, right? And we also understand that it's just not a bottom line issue. We're just not looking at the bottom line. We're looking at the fact that it is going to make us better. We're going to enter. How can entering into new markets be a bad thing? Right? If we're constantly saying, okay, this industry has traditionally been in the white middle class market, right? That is a good thing, and we've made money there. But who in their right mind would say, let's not open up and expand our view of the world, and let's not try to get into Black markets. Let's not try to get into Asian markets. Let's not try to get into LGBTQ markets, military veteran markets, the disability community. How can that be a bad thing? And eventually what's going to happen is opening up and going into those markets is going to increase our bottom line. It is going to enhance our value alignment with our clients. So those things I think those things work mutual. I think they work together. So I'm sort of a proponent of both. We don't have to segregate them.
Tell me about your work on the CIAB committee. How come you wanted to be a part of that, first of all?
I don't know if it's because of my union background, but I really do believe that we are going to be better collectively than individually. So NFP, we're part of a number of alliances, and one of them is CIAB, because I do think, this is the one area of the business where we are not in competition with each other. We are really trying to work together, understanding that we are only going to move the needle systemically and culturally by working together. And, the only way to do that is to be a part of places like CIAB.
Yeah.
And so the moment I came to NFP and saw that there was an opportunity, I wanted to make sure we were part of that, and want to continue to help with the collaborations across the industry as well as outside, because we're a member of other collaborations and alliances that are outside of the insurance industry. And I think that's the only way we're going to make this the type of change and long-lasting, impactful change that we need to, by working together.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to your career move from your sports career to now your insurance career. What's been the biggest surprise for you in that transition, or maybe the biggest adjustment maybe you've had to make?
So, it's funny. I don't really, I haven't had to make many adjustments, right? I mean, I've been creating spaces for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging my entire career. Just been doing it in a different industry, right? So, I mean, when you think about the WNBA, and when we talk about systemic and cultural change, when you think about it, the WNBA started by an organization that operates a male sports league. And they wanted to operate the WNBA pretty much the same way they operated the male sports league. So those are systemic and cultural issues that we had to address. The same way that we're talking about middle-aged white men being successful in the insurance industry, and how do we make ways for other cultures and other people to be successful within that? It's the exact same thing. How do we work to make the WNBA and the WNBA players and that fan base, et cetera, successful, really, in a league that was sort of designed after an all-male league? Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. I'm just doing it in a different industry.
Pamela, anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't raise?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Listen, I really, really appreciate your time and your help with this.
Thanks.
That was Associate Editor Chris Hand with NFP Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer Pamela Wheeler. I hope you enjoyed their conversation. For more Personal Lines podcasts, go to leadersedge.com.